Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. This is number 170. It is, what is it, March 18th? This is actually a great day. We're getting to the equinox where the days will get progressively longer, but we get an equal one in the coming week. We have a ton to talk about as always. We're going to start with various topics and issues, including TikTok, which at the age of pushing 80, I have no idea what's going on. If I want to use TikTok, I got to surround myself with my grandchildren. But we're going to deal with TikTok. We're going to deal with a lot of election protection issues and maybe get to Haiti in the first while. I see we're honored by the great Dennis Bernstein. And we have Anna and Selma with us, take us to Florida for a bit. In the second hour, we're going to start at the top of the hour at 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific, and talk about energy, specifically 3 Mile Island, the anniversary of 3 Mile Island, in which people did die in droves. I know, I was there. We're going to talk about that at 6 o'clock, and then hopefully joined by the great Ray McClendon at 6:30, talk about election protection issues and various others, getting to how we're going to protect this election. God help us if we can. We're going to start with a candidate. We are a nonprofit, so we do not raise money for candidates. We do not allow candidates to raise money on our call, but we do like to hear them out, especially young ones who are not in the mainstream of the Democrat or any other party. I will, as protocol, remind you, we will be talking about a congresswoman from Florida whose name is Deborah Schultz. We do not use her middle name, just as we do not call Lee Oswald by his middle name. So, but he didn't kill John Kennedy. We don't know about Debbie Schultz. Nonetheless, we're going to start with this young candidate in Illinois, QUASIM RASHID, and we are going to avoid talk about the Middle East, but we will talk about energy policy, which is a very big deal. And QUASIM, again, Wendy LEDERMAN, who's with us, has brought you to join us. We're also joined by John Steiner. John, it's great to see you with us. And TATANKA BRICCA, the erstwhile chair of the KPFK board in Los Angeles, Myra Reeson, so many great people. Mike Hirsch, good to have you with us as our co-conspirator, and Steve Caruso, our unsung but fabulous engineer, keeps us going. We also see Nancy LARSON from Ohio. Whenever we see somebody from Ohio, we offer condolences, and we will be talking about the Ohio political scene later in this hour. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us. QUASIM, you're running in Illinois for the Congress. Can you tell us what's going on and who you're running against, and what's your major platform?
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with all of you. Thank you, Wendy, for the invitation. And I'm grateful for your time. My name is QUASIM RASHID. I'm running for U.S. Congress in the 11th District of Illinois. I'm a human rights lawyer who is fighting. My platform pillars are economic, social, and climate justice. That means I'm calling for a living wage, a cancellation of student debt, guaranteed universal health care, and following climate policy to get us to carbon neutral by 2030. We're not taking any corporate money. This is not a fundraising call, but it's a principle of our campaign that we're 100% people funded, and we're leading with our values. We have run a really robust ground game. The election is tomorrow. My opponent is an 8-term incumbent, well-funded by corporations, has really made some really terrible votes in terms of repeatedly stripping down the ACA, voting to deregulate banks, voting to strip down the Americans with Disabilities Act, and of course, unfortunately, in his 8 terms, he hasn't passed any actual pieces of legislation outside of renaming a post office. And so my vision is to be elected as someone committed to working families. I grew up low income in Section 8 housing. I understand the struggles of millions of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. And given that all these issues that I struggled with as a child, wealth and income inequality, lack of healthcare access, the climate crisis, the opioid crisis, that they're all worse now, it stands to reason that if we want meaningful change and progress, then we need to elect people who are more representative of our beautiful country, not just from a racial or gender standpoint, but from an experience standpoint. And given my work in this space, working with marginalized communities, I'm excited to come to Congress and transform my advocacy for human rights into better policy for human rights.
Terrific. Well, first of all, you get the prize for being best dressed on the call. And I will, without going into detail, inform you for just the record that if you're in favor of renewable, safe energy and a carbon-free economy, you cannot in any way, shape, or form support nuclear power. And if we need to have a conversation offline about that, it's fine, many of us, or you can stay with us and talk. We're going to be talking more about it at 6 o'clock, but which we always do. This is my 50th, count them, 50th year fighting nuclear power, and we have won. There are no more large commercial reactors under construction in the United States, and never will be. They're playing games with small reactors, but I think we can beat them. And it's a pleasure to have you on, QUASIM. What's your district and who are you running against?
My district is the 11th district of Illinois, and it is the collared counties. It's basically Will, DuPage, Kane, McHenry, with 4 other smaller counties we can talk about as well. My opponent is a person named Bill Foster, and our district is very diverse. It's about 60% white, 40% Black, Latino, and Asian. In fact, Latinos are about 22% of the district. It's quite diverse. This is the district I grew up in, when I was very young, and so I've got my roots here. It's exciting to run same place where I grew up for Congress.
And is this Ramadan for you?
It is. I'm fasting right now.
Well, one of my greatest heroes in religious practice is Hakeem Olajuwon.
Of course.
Because he actually played in the NBA through Ramadan.
That's right.
First of all, he was as great an athlete as ever lived.
Yep.
And secondly, he ran the court for 60 minutes without food. Good for him. Okay. KARLA, Sam, did you want to ask QUASIM something? KARLA? We have 47 people with us. If you want to raise your hand, WENDI, do I have to unmute you here? Well, anyway.
Okay. This is KARLA in Minnesota, and I would like to ask the candidate a question because we have a housing situation in Minnesota as well. And you said you were with human rights. How about that? Is that one of your human rights issue, housing for everyone? Housing? Well, in Minnesota, they're trying to change regulations to get housing for everyone, which affects everyone. I think there might be an easier way. Do you have any specific programs going on that can increase housing?
We have a robust housing policy. And, for me, this is another example of why we need to get corporate money out of politics. One of the reasons why we have the housing crisis is because the politicians that we've elected to protect our interests are instead funded by the same corporations and lobbyists exploiting us. And I'll give you one good example of that, and I'll give you the solution as well. The example of that is the National Association of Realtors, which just fined $2 billion for excessive fees on sellers and buyers. This has drastically increased the price of housing. A recent report showed that since 2020, you would need to increase your income 80% to afford the same size home. Unheard of. My opponent, Bill Foster, for example, sits on the House Financial Services Oversight Committee. They're supposed to conduct oversight on the National Association of Realtors. Instead of conducting oversight, he's taken nearly $80,000 in campaign contributions from them. And that's fundamentally a problem. My vision is not only just to reject that money so that I'm accountable to working people, but I think Congressman Castro has put forward an excellent bill that would build 7 million more affordable subsidized housing. And we know this is a proven model. Post-World War II with the baby boom, this is how the FHA accommodated the mass increase in population in the United States. Now, at that time, those homes were only made available to white people. Black and brown people had no access, which was obviously Jim Crow racism. But now we can build a better model of building, at least 7 million more homes, making sure that housing is affordable as a human right. I'm also a big fan of UBI, Universal Basic Income. Every study shows that UBI absolutely increases the net worth of individuals. It decreases depression and suicide rates, decreases crime rates, increases small business strength. So these are, when I talk about my policies focusing on economic, social, and climate justice, when I talk about economic justice, this is what I'm talking about. How do we make sure these basic humanitarian needs are met as a human right? And how do we make sure there's more dollars in the pockets of middle-class Americans?
Let me warn you, I am a historian, and the real root of the housing crisis in the United States today is because of Ronald Reagan.
Yep.
When Reagan was in the White House, he killed an $85 billion public housing bill for no good reason. And then in the next term, under Clinton, actually, a congressman, a one-term senator from North Carolina named Louch Faircloth, I never heard anybody else named Louch, passed a law which Clinton signed, of course, forbidding the government to build public housing. And that is the root.
Yeah.
And we're still trying to make up that. If they had built $85 billion worth of public housing in the 1980s, we'd be fine.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
there you go. Wendy Lederman, go ahead. Are you muted? No. Yes. Hold on. We have 50 people with us, and Wendy, you are.
Just really appreciate
Go ahead. Okay.
There we go. Thank you. Sorry, it's so great to meet you, QUASIM, and I really appreciate you being with us, especially with the race tomorrow. I have a really excellent feeling about it. The campaign, somehow the algorithms sometimes do me favors, and you ended up in my social media, my Instagram, and I recommend everybody follow, because for months I've been watching QUASIM talk about the issues, but he does something in a way that is unique, that not only does he talk about the issue, he kind of reports as if things like public service, like he's letting people know what's going on, but then providing a solution in a positive, unifying manner. And it's just really incredible, because he's a human rights lawyer. Clearly he can make more money doing something else than running a publicly funded campaign to become a congressman. So I'm just wondering, as a human rights lawyer, if you want to kind of comment a little bit on why you're running, but also what we're seeing with the preservation, or the threats to the preservation of rights through the Supreme Court, and any comments you have on that. And I just really suggest everybody follow his campaign, follow everything he's doing. I see a really bright future for this guy, and he's just really great. And also I want to say he's really great on women's issues, and I feel like in a genuine manner, which is really kind of unique, actually, even in activism. So thank you so much, QUASIM, for all you're doing. It's amazing.
Thank you, Wendy. I just try to do what my wife tells me to do, and it works out pretty well for me.
Well, that's the other.
Smart, see?
Well, I want to tell you, QUASIM, that I wear the pants in my family, and my wife gave me permission to say that. So
Yeah,
go
there
ahead.
you go, right? Yeah, that's Wendy, it's a very, very thoughtful comments from you. I really appreciate your kindness and your empathy. For me, I think the fundamental core of what motivates me, to elaborate on something I said earlier, is we grew up low income. We grew up food insecure. We grew up housing insecure. I was in high school when the opioid crisis was, rearing its ugly head. I remember Al Gore talking about the impending climate crisis. We grew up without meaningful healthcare access. And as I think about now, 30 years later, after high school and middle school, I think about how 6 times as many people are dying from the opioid crisis as in the 90s. I think about how more than 30 million Americans don't have basic healthcare access. And if you need reproductive healthcare access, tough luck, you don't have an option. In fact, even if you have health insurance and you're Kate Cox in Texas, tough luck for you. I think about how 1 in 4 military families and 1 in 6 Americans are food insecure right now, at a time of, we have the most wealth of any country in the history of humanity. I think about how 22 million households can't afford the home that they're living in because housing has become so expensive. And so for me, recognizing that all the things that enraged me, and I use that word on purpose, as a young person, because they were just so unjust and wrong, when I recognize that they've all actually gotten worse, and it doesn't have to be this way. Reagan is a big part of that, But another big part of that are, in my view, some Democrats who don't see the urgency of the hour. My opponent calls himself proudly an incrementalist, that we need incremental change. Well, he's a wealthy white man worth $20 million. You know, that may be all well and good for him, but for the rest of 99% of society who's not worth $20 million and aren't a wealthy white man, incremental change is the death knell, right? My daughter, 8-year-old daughter, sweetest girl you ever met, has an incurable autoimmune disease. The insurance companies won't cover her medication. We need 6 doses a year. Each dose costs $40,000.
Oh my God.
I can't go to her and say, sweetheart, wait for incremental change so that you can live. She's 8, right? We need change now. We need guaranteed healthcare now. And one of my good friends from when I lived in Virginia, she's a state senator, Jennifer Carroll Foy, and her story is inspiring for a number of reasons. But she has this great quote about why she ran for office. And she said that I realized that if we can't change their minds, then we need to change their seats. And that's fundamentally what this is for me, that, you know, these politicians who are sitting in their incrementalist ivory towers, if we can't change their minds, then we need to change their seats and get them out of the way so that we can bring about the meaningful change and progress that people in this country deserve for their basic human dignity.
Well, of course, the seats are kind of where their heads are lodged, but that's another story. Let's get Mary Butler, and then we'll continue. You're very, very good, very articulate, Qasim, and I hope you'll continue to be with us. Mary, go ahead, Mary Stonewall. Mary Butler Stonewall, can I unmute you here? There, yeah, no, sorry. This is a ritual we go through, Qasim, my apologies. I can't get her unmuted. I want to point out to you, by the way.
Sometimes people walk away from things.
Somebody's breaking up, and I can't get Mary unmuted. I will point out, by the way, you're from the land of Lincoln, and I don't. Not many people know this, but Abraham Lincoln was actually the first person to go on record as saying that the future of energy in America would be wind power. He said that there was more. You know, look it up. He said there was more wind power in Illinois than the nation could ever use. As he's from your neighborhood, of course. All right. Well, thank you so much, Qasim. We'll get to Mary later. 54 people with you, and you're very articulate. It's great to hear from you. I don't know why, you know, we have lost the basic focus on the human race, the big picture of the human race. All we need to do is supply food, housing, medical care, education, clothing, and transportation, and to all the people in the world. And we can totally afford that.
Absolutely.
And without blinking an eye.
Yep.
We have also solved, you know, years ago, we were talking about a population problem of overpopulation. Now we all have all these countries complaining about underpopulation. But we have solved the population question.
Yep.
The population question is totally determined by the rights of women. Wherever women are empowered and have income, population drops. And, you know, women are in touch with Mother Earth. We will get the right number of people on this planet, hopefully without war. And so, at any rate, good luck to you, Qasim. Stay with us through the coming whatever, and you can make us a final statement, and let's go to Ohio with Nancy Larson next.
Well, I think my comms director, Sydney, is putting our contact information in there. So if anybody wants to reach out to us afterwards, they absolutely can. You know, my vision in this race is to set a precedent that these issues of economic, social, and climate justice are not just, you know, good ideas, they're winning ideas. And that if we can motivate and inspire a mass of people to work together on these values, especially early in the 2024 election, we can set a precedent for the 2024 election on how we can win up and down the ballot. This is a solid D district, but it's also a suburban district. If we can show that these values resonate with suburban voters, then hopefully we can set a precedent going forward, especially given that we have the DNC in Chicago later this summer. My ask of folks is actually more important than money. It's your time. If you have bandwidth to volunteer for these causes and phone bank for us tonight and tomorrow, please reach out to Sydney, send her your name, and we'd love to get you involved in this campaign. At the end of the day, this is our opportunity. I close with a quote of James Baldwin, one of my favorite thinkers and writers and scholars, where he writes in his book, The Fire Next Time, where he's discussing all the struggles and trials and tribulations. And he admits, I know that which I ask of you is impossible, but the impossible is the least that we can demand. For when we look at the spectacle of human history in general and Black history in particular, we are emboldened by witnessing nothing less than the perpetual achievement of the impossible. So that's my ask of you. Join our campaign, help us achieve the impossible, and let's win this election on these tenets of justice, because justice can't wait. Thank you so much, everybody.
Steve, thank you so much. 54 people were on when you said that. I will give you a little bit of history, more than you may want to hear, but you say that Chicago is going to be the site of the Democratic Convention this year?
Yeah.
So we're joined on this call by Lissa Matras, who's from Chicago. She lives in the Bay Area now. And Lissa and I, at the corner of Michigan Balboa in 1968, were attacked by the Chicago police. So I don't think that's going to happen this year. But anyway, enjoy the peace and have a wonderful trip up there. And no nukes to you. Okay, bro?
Thank you, guys. Thank you all. Be well.
All right, take care. Thank you very much. Mary Stonewall, let's try and unmute again, and then we're going to go to Nancy Larson in Ohio. There we go. You're unmuted. Go ahead, Mary.
Thanks for the condolences. But we have actually had a couple victories here.
Wait, Nancy, let Mary get us her words in, and then we'll go to you in Ohio, okay?
Okay.
Nancy Stonewall, go ahead.
Well, Nancy's there. I'm Mary. I'm here, Stonewall.
Mary Stonewall, go ahead.
All right, just two quick things. Please let me get both of them out, and then I'm done. It shouldn't take more than 2 shakes of a stick.
Go for it.
Number one thing that wasn't mentioned in the conversation that I wanted to address with him, and maybe if you guys are more in contact with him or share his contact with information with me, that would be wonderful. But we have more United States refugees going from state to state to state of homelessness because of natural disasters, being priced out of their homes, losing their jobs during the pandemic, or no wage increase, or people even actually having their Social Security stripped from them. But that's what happened to me. My Social Security was stripped from me. And then we need to address that, because nobody's mentioning the fact that we have more U.S. refugees in the United States right now than we have foreign refugees. And then the second thing is, when we talk about community health care and a worldwide minimum wage or a U.S. minimum wage of sustainability, a living wage, how come they call it socialism, but if we're in an indigenous tribe, we call it tribalism, where the tribe takes care of itself? So why can't we have that same thing and not make it a dirty word? That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Well, good for you. And thank you, Mary. And let's try the word humanism. Maybe that will work too. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, Nancy Larson, you're in Ohio. Where are you in Ohio?
In the Toledo area.
Okay, you're near Davis Bessie. When the call is over, if you'll go over and shut it down.
Yeah. I went on a tour of it after they passed HB 6, because I was running at that point for state rep, and one of the sitting state reps who had voted for HB 6, which is a nuclear power coal plant bailout, thought she could change my mind if I went to see how well run it was.
Yeah,
but
right.
It didn't work.
Well, Ohio has the distinction of having one of the few state legislatures in the country with a clear and definite price tag, which is $61 million. If you want to get the state legislature in Ohio to do something for you, $61 million. But go ahead, Nancy, give us your story, please. You're a welcome guest.
Thank you. I did run for state rep, was not successful, but I've stayed involved, and I'm doing a lot of democracy, anti-gerrymandering projects. But to go back to the last two things that we were successful at, August of last year, there was a special election put on the legislators decided that even though they had said there shouldn't be special elections except for school board levies, they wanted a special election in order to try to take away our democracy. We have a ballot initiative process in Ohio. I think 19 states allow that. And we put on, they were wanting to pass that if a ballot initiative was proposed by people, that we needed a 60% threshold in order for that to pass. And yeah, and this was because polling was clear that for a women's reproductive ballot initiative, which they knew was on the ballot in November, that we would reach a 57-58% threshold of approval for that, but it wouldn't go to 60%. So prior to that November election, they decided in August to try to change the rules and make the passage rate be 60% in all of the counties. We were like, yeah, no. So we fought and fought and fought and got that down. 20 counties that had voted for Trump voted no on that because there was a strong coalition of Dems, Republicans, Libertarians, Independents that came out and said, this is anti-democratic, we're not going for this. And that was soundly voted down by 57%. So then in November, we did have the women's reproductive rights to enshrine abortion rights back in the Ohio Constitution, and we passed that with 57%. So those two victories have made us feel pretty good, and it's energized a lot of grassroots activity. We are fired up to continue that and try to, Sherrod Brown is in a pretty much the race of his life. There are 3 Republicans that are running against him. It's going to be pretty competitive for him, some because he hasn't come out for ceasefire, and that's not acceptable to a lot of folks in our area and younger people here. As much as he's done for working people, he's not on the right side of that issue, in my opinion, and other folks' opinion. So that's going to be a struggle for him.
And what is when is the primary in Ohio?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Tuesday is tomorrow. So
So
yeah,
we'll know who he's going to run against.
right. A guy named Bernie Moreno is a Cleveland businessman that Trump has endorsed. The other 2, Matt Dolan is a state senator right now, and our Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, are the 3 Republicans that are going up against him. And it'll be interesting to see which one of those prevails.
Okay, so one major landmark happened in Ohio. We're going to talk about this in the second hour, but there was approval today or yesterday for the first offshore wind array in Lake Erie. And they've been fighting that tooth and nail. It's amazing a guy named Bernie Moreno is Trump's guy, but there you go. Now, Trump, of course, in Ohio, where else, has declared that there will be a bloodbath if he does not win. Did we get any explanation on that?
Somebody said it's a dog whistle, and it's like, no, it's not a dog whistle, it's a bullhorn. You know, he very clearly wants to keep the violence going, and unfortunately, things are there's Trump signs that never went down in Ohio that are, you know, they just changed them out to 2024. We have 52% of folks vote regularly Republican and 48%. We are so gerrymandered that we have a supermajority in both houses in the state house, but Ohio is purple. It's not red. And the issue that I'm working on right now, we are putting on the November ballot to have an independent redistricting commission, similar to what Michigan did a couple years ago, and getting rid of the gerrymandering by the maps being drawn proportionally so that we have likely 52% Republican winners and 48% Dems. Will get rid of that supermajority that they have enjoyed since the last 20 years.
Well, we have to point out that Ohio has passed two public referenda to ban gerrymandering.
Yes,
There have been 5 Ohio Supreme Court decisions,
7.
7 now, banning gerrymandering, and it's still worse than it ever was. Is that correct?
Yes, well, the governor and his crew that did the unfair, unconstitutional maps, those 2 ballot initiatives were in 2015, 2018. And we left in place that the politicians would be in charge of the commission, because we didn't think at that point, League of Women Voters and ACLU, that we could get it passed in 2018 with an independent commission. So they stayed in charge of drawing the districts. And over the last draw, 7 different times, the Ohio Supreme Court, that was Republican majority, said no. These are unconstitutional. They're not following the anti-gerrymandering standard that requires proportionality. And the Supreme Court basically just said, we are co-equal branches of government. We hear your opinion, but you're not the boss of us. We don't have to listen to you. And they kept on getting more, throwing back, redrawn, still unfair, unconstitutional ballots until they ran the clock out. And we had to run the last cycle with these gerrymandered maps. So
in the 2024 election, will you be using gerrymandered maps again?
yes, yes.
So in a
Yes.
state that's 52-48 Republican Democrat, we're going to again wind up with a state house that is 2/3 in both houses or more Republican.
Yeah. Until
And
we
the-
get this ballot initiative on and we get the independent citizens there and we can start the redraw again in 2025.
And the congressional delegation will basically be what? What, 10-5?
I think I can't speak to that right this second because I don't follow as much the federal, what's happening. My focus has been laser on the state.
Okay.
But both Marcy's in a race. She will likely prevail because she's Marcy, but they have tried with the redraw in 2024. It is still extremely unfair.
And you have Dennis Kucinich is running also for a seat in the Congress there.
Yes.
And he has a primary. I assume he's going to win. And then we'll see what happens with that. Okay, go ahead, Nancy.
You had said you wanted an update on the Larry Householder stuff. Ohio has been judged the most corrupt state house in the country. And Larry Householder, who was our speaker, was convicted, and he's spending the next 20 years in jail for that $61 million bribe that was given from First Energy to him to get folks there that would pass HB6, which was the nuclear power bailout. It gave them 1.4 billion in rate increases in an 8-year period. And he was convicted, and Matt Borges, who's a lobbyist. So they're done, they're in jail.
All right. Well, and it's good to know that we've established a price for the state legislature. So if you like want to, name a stadium after yourself, or a county, or maybe a city, you can go buy the legislature for $61 million and get whatever you want. Nancy, thank you. We have one hand. I do want to check in. Ray McClendon, you've joined us here. Do you want to talk now about what's going on in Georgia and also the voter repression stuff that we're facing? Is this a good moment for Ray McClendon? Ray, you on? Are you unmuted, or did you leave us, Ray? Oh, there he is. Ray, is this a good time for you to talk about what's going on in Georgia?
Yeah, yes, I can. Thanks.
All right, well, let's go. We'll come back to you in a minute.
Okay.
We'll postpone I don't see the woman who is going to discuss Haiti, and of course we have Wendy and others to discuss other issues, but we know Ray's time is limited. Sandy Bolzenius, go ahead. And then
Yeah,
we'll
I'm
go.
just gonna piggyback real quickly on what Nancy said. Nancy, that was a really great low down on what you talked about. But that was just disgraceful what happened last time. God, I'm sounding like Trump. When about how it went down and we were deprived of our rights, though we worked so hard for it. But then it was even worse because the maps that people were supposed to be running, we were supposed to use for the that last election, people still didn't know where the lines were drawn. And so what was happening is that the party in power was clumping candidates that they knew were really strong together and had people running against each other who did not expect to run together. They didn't know what was going to happen. And I will say one last thing, the corporate Dems, as I call them, are not helpful at all. We should be running people in every district. And instead, what's happening is when someone starts running who's progressive, they're down on that person. They are not helpful. They're subverting that person's campaign, those people's campaigns. It's horrible. We have no money, but somehow they have tons of money to send to knock out the progressives. So that's all I want to
Yeah,
say.
it's outrageous. It's really outrageous what the Senate candidate here in California, Adam Schiff, did. He took his money and
Yes,
promoted this horrible Republican against two really good Democrats. He could have been a mensch and run and said, I'm glad to be joined by the legendary Barbara Lee and by Katie Porter. And instead he played a stupid game. And now we got him running against this really terrifying right-wing fascist. It's really disgusting. Thank you for that, Sandy. Nancy, do you want to give a last word? And then we're going to have the great Ray McClendon talk briefly about Fani Willis, and then we want to talk about voter repression in the larger sense. I'm joined in my house by Sheila Goldner, who just handed me a piece up that Tom Hartman has run. We'll talk about that in a minute. We also have the great Dennis Bernstein on from Flashpoints. Go ahead, Sandy, or Nancy, rather. You want to finish up?
I'm just excited. I think we will get this on the ballot in November. I think it will pass and we will have an independent commission of 15 citizens, 5 Republicans, 5 Dems, 5 independents to draw the maps proportionally, and they'll do what the politicians have refused to do and give us fair proportional districts.
Well, here's a hint for you. The big redistricting and the very successful commission on districting came into California because of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Schwarzenegger, when he was governor and then after, put in $3 million of his own money. And we wound up in California with a pretty good nonpartisan or multi-partisan districting commission. And then this is the law of unintended consequences, what I love. You all know, I'm sure, that Arnold's having an affair with his housekeeper. And they had a son. And the son, Joseph, went to the University of Michigan. And because he was in Ann Arbor, Arnold came to Michigan and supported a districting commission in Michigan. Now, if the kid had gone to Ohio State, and I'm glad he didn't, things would be different. But every year in Columbus, you have the Arnold, where he comes and lifts weights. So maybe you could get Arnold.
No, he's come. He was here a week or two ago and did a terminate the gerrymander thing.
He did?
Yes,
Well, you got to get that for us. That's fantastic. You got to get that for us.
Okay.
Please do. Arnold, but get him a Michigan jersey, but not in Ohio. Get him an Ohio State one.
He had some Ohio connection that explained why he was willing to do that.
No, he comes to Columbus every year and does a weightlifting thing.
Yes, because he won the world thing here in Ohio. That was his. I got to go and help.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that Arnold is on the gerrymandering case in Ohio. So we got to deal with that too. Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you, Sandy Bolzenius. Okay, we're going to jump to bigger issues of voter repression. We're going to start with Fani Willis, and then Ray McClendon is our man in Atlanta, and then we're going to jump in to Tom Hartman with Ray and all these issues that have come in on voter suppression. hopefully we're a little beyond now, finally, the Fani Willis thing. But go ahead, Ray, if you would, and give us an on the spot.
No, the Fani Willis situation is the gift that's going to keep on giving.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because of the litigious nature of Donald Trump and his playbook. This is just the early rounds. This is going to continue for a while. As everyone knows on this call, last Friday, Judge McAfee came down with his ruling, indicating the lead should have been that he allowed her to stay on the case, Fani Willis to stay on the case, provided that she let Attorney Wade go, which occurred within a matter of hours on Friday. That happened. But buried in his opinion was a lot of gratuitous remarks by the judge, quite frankly, similar to the way that the attorney, the government attorney, her did to Joe Biden by making remarks that were beyond the scope of what the issue was. They did not meet, they meaning Trump and the attorneys Sadow and Merchant did not meet their burden to show that there was a conflict of interest, financial conflict of interest that would impact the proper adjudication of the case with them involved. However, because of what he went on to talk about in terms of improprieties, unethical, inappropriate relationship, he then decided that they needed to have one of them to step aside. And of course, the right decision was made for Wade to step aside so that the case could remain in the Fulton County office. And we've had these conversations in previous weeks that if the two of them, if she has to step aside, it will be taken away from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, turned over to a state agency called the Prosecuting Attorneys Commission, which then would have to identify another constitutional officer, district attorney of the state of Georgia, which there are about 50 of them in different counties across the state. And one of them would have to have the expertise and the resources to do that. So essentially the case would go away because the Republicans control that Prosecuting Attorneys Commission. So it was a major win at that level. As many of you already know, on Friday, they had the defendants indicated they were going to appeal. That appeal now is going forward to the Georgia Court of Appeals. It will likely then get appealed, regardless of who wins, to the Georgia Supreme Court, and probably will even get appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. The bottom line of all of this is that it is 99.9% certain now, in my view, that this case will not see the light of day in 2024. I just don't see any way that they can get this on the calendar in time, given that the two appeals courts in Georgia have got to take a look at it, and for the Supreme Court to take a look at it would be into the fall. So by the time it gets to them, based upon what I'm hearing from some legal experts. I hope that I'm wrong about that. I hope that's not the case. But the issue is delay is Trump's game plan, and right now he's being very successful in that. So that's the quick overview, and I'd be happy to talk about any questions or other of the many subplots to this that you want to talk about.
All right. Anybody want to raise their hand and talk about it? And then we want to move on to the bigger issues of voter suppression. This, of course, is the famous case where Trump calls the Secretary of State and asks if he could get 12,000 votes. You know, this guy, go ahead, Ray.
Well, that's what started it, but the reality is that the unfortunate part of all of this is that the case is so strong because it is RICO, a RICO case, and it has pulled in many of the elements, quite frankly, of the fake elector scheme, the scheme to subvert the election machines. That is all of those things are going on in other states, and Fani Willis had the presence to look into all of these things, draw them together into this sprawling indictment. And now, as you know, they're having similar investigations in Michigan and Arizona and elsewhere. And it's just unfortunate that it's been able to be derailed in terms of what the lead is about this case. That is now about whether or not they went Dutch on some vacations, as opposed to the sprawling criminal enterprise that Donald Trump has been the head of, that not only included strong-arming the Secretary of State of Georgia, but also knowing now what we know about the fake electors and subverting the voting machines, and how that all ties together in one large criminal conspiracy.
Wow, very well stated, Ray. We're going to get in a minute to a few things that Tom Hartman has written about this. Very, very important stuff about voter suppression and election theft, which is, of course, the root of these calls and has been for almost 4 years. And you, Ray, have been right there with us. So once we get through the salacious garbage that inevitably comes around, we get to the nitty gritty, and that's what we want to do. Steve, Mary, Mike Hirsch, 50, we got 57 people on with us. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, one thing the courts can do at any time is reject an appeal, right? Ray, isn't that possible? So
Yes.
Fingers crossed. Thanks.
Yes.
All right, Mary and then Mike. Mary, go ahead, and Mike. I can't hear you, Mary.
You're muted.
Mary, you're still muted. Let's give it to Mike Hirsch. We'll come right back.
I'm unmuted.
All right, go ahead.
Mary.
Real quick, Mary, please.
All right. Voter suppression also is the fact that all our ballots are demanding that we put Republican or Democrat on the outside of the envelope and on the inside. Out of the 136 different organizations running, we're only allowed to do Democrat or Republican. So that's voter suppression. And then secondly, the other thing I wanted to mention is, how come nobody's mentioning that Trump, even though he's being investigated, is saying things like there will be blood if he loses his election?
A lot of people are saying that, Mary.
That's terrible.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for that, Mary. Thank you. Mike, go ahead. Now I want to go back to Ray, and let's talk in greater detail about voter suppression here and the issues that Tom Hartman has raised. Go ahead, Mike Hirsch.
Thanks. Ray, remind me, have people already pled guilty in this case and turned evidence against Trump?
Again, that's what's so tragic about this, Mike, is that she has been able to get guilty pleas from 4 people, 3 of them lawyers, and I mean prominent lawyers: Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, and Ken Chesbrough. Those are major national figures in the conspiracy that could be indicted in 5 or 6 other different states and jurisdictions, as a matter of fact. So there's major work that has been done that was leading toward further guilty pleas that would have been possible, and further evidence against the kingpin and the inner circle, being Trump and Giuliani, among others. So again, as Fani Willis famously said, when she was on the witness stand, she said to Merchant, one of the defense attorneys, you're trying to put me on trial, but they are the ones on trial for trying to steal an election. And that's what we are unfortunately losing sight of based upon all of these salacious tit for tats. And unfortunately, the way that McAfee wrote the ruling, that's going to continue because of some of the, to me, what were gratuitous statements that were made in his ruling that did not relate to whether or not the defendants met their burden of showing that there was a conflict under Georgia law.
Oh, it's outrageous. And obviously, if he winds up in the White House next year, this all goes away.
No, that's the good thing about this case. And that's why this one is so important. And he's fighting it so hard because this is a state case. And he does not have the power to pardon himself or to pull the prosecutors off the case the way that he does with any federal case and being able to influence the Justice Department.
All right. Ruth Strauss has a hand, and I want to ask you a question about the potential for violence at the polling places. By the way, I do not read the chats in these calls, and there may be things that are said about people, personal attacks that come in the chats that I have no way of knowing about. And people, please disregard if there's nasty stuff in the chats, just let it go. The alternative is to turn off the chats, but we want to do that because people exchange, contacts very importantly in the chats. So the nasty stuff, I don't know what's said, and I've had people who were insulted on these calls by things I never see in the chats, just the way it is. So we count the chats as kind of extraneous. Ruth Strauss, please, and then I'll ask Ray another question. Ruth, go ahead.
Oh, Ray, I just want to tell you that I am heartbroken for Fani. She is brilliant. She's feisty, and it's like a Greek tragedy.
Yes.
But I wanted to remind people that not only those three, standout people that people knew about, Powell and Chesbro, et cetera, but also the guy in Coffee County who copied the hard drive of one of the voting machines and then was stupid enough to brag about it to Marilyn Marks, who I hope you all are working with because she's really a dynamo and she has a lot of connection with voting, experts around the country. But anyway, I just wanted people to remember that as well. Thank you.
No, that's a great point, and you're absolutely right. And that just goes to the core of how strong her case is and how smart she is. And quite frankly, how much work that she did that should have been done by Merrick Garland in his office.
Yeah.
All of this stuff that she's uncovering should have been the lead in Merrick Garland. And that's for another day. But one of the most disappointing appointments of all time has to be Merrick Garland in the way that he has handled this and his offices. I mean, what SDNY, the Southern District of New York office, just did to the New York Manhattan District Attorney's office by dumping 31,000 documents on them 2 weeks before they were supposed to start trial. When they convicted Cohen, several years ago and had all of this stuff and just now turned it over, is just a travesty.
Right. And the timing, this should all been happening a year ago.
Correct.
If this blow up with what's his name, Nathan, whatever his name is, and Fani and Willis, if this had come a year ago and then it got processed, it wouldn't be such a big deal.
Correct.
But the Attorney General You have to wonder what kind of Supreme Court justice he really would have been, Merrick Garland. He's been such a wimp at the Attorney General's office. It's ridiculous. All these, down to the wire prosecutions with Trump, they should have happened 2 years ago, for God's sakes. It's ridiculous. Paul NEWMAN, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Merrick Garland was a selection from Orrin Hatch, which in the old days, in the early millennium, we used to refer to him as the Antichrist. And why Obama and Biden would select a guy like him? It's like, oh, let's reach across the aisle. I really, really wonder about this. I know I get into conspiracy a little bit, but Biden is a corporate Democrat, and I have to remind myself about that. I will vote for him only because after he's in, we can foment change, a lot easier than we would with Trump, and that's my strategy. But I am really fed up. I mean, where is Merrick Garland? He hasn't done anything.
Right. And I gotta throw in a parallel, which is the head of the Postal Service. Why is Louis DeJoy still running the Postal Service? I mean, this guy is a complete saboteur. It's not that he's stupid. He is actively destroying the Postal Service. And when Trump came in, it was our assumption that Biden would get him out of there. And instead, he's still there after 4 years. You got to be kidding me. It's ridiculous. Ray, I want to ask you the big question on people's minds. What are the possibilities of violence at the polls in Georgia? We're hearing that the Proud Boys are going to be out. They're taking over the local boards. That voter suppression is in high gear. What is the situation in Georgia with getting a fair election?
There's no question that voter suppression is strong, particularly in battleground states like Georgia. And it will manifest in multiple ways. It's manifesting in the state legislatures. It's manifest with new voter suppression laws that we have to fight at every turn. We're in session here in the state at the state capitol right now, and we've had to beat back further voter suppression measures. It is at play with voter purges by the not only the Secretary of State, but by the laws that went into effect in the past that allow for citizens to independently go before election boards to demand that the rolls be scrubbed of specific individuals that they allege that other citizens allege are on the rolls illegally. And we've had people here in Georgia where one citizen can go in and request a purge of thousands of citizens. So we have multiple levels going into the fall. We know that local election boards are being infiltrated by MAGA, QAnon loyalists who are full of conspiracy theories, so that what happened in Coffee County can happen in multiple jurisdictions around the state. And then finally, we know that there will be a surge of disinformation and misinformation around the election that will mobilize many of these MAGA folk to show up at different polling locations, different precincts, to foment chaos. So it's going to be important that we fight on all of these fronts. And going into the fall, we will need a lot of progressive poll monitors, poll watchers, whatever the moniker is in your area, that will be in front of these local election boards and be out in the streets at these precincts during early voting. Andrea Miller will be able to talk to you all a little bit later about an app that she has worked on with one of her board members called See Something, Say Something. Some of you may be familiar with it, but it's an app that will allow you to really be a citizen that can record an event that appears to be improper, get video of it, and then submit that, and she'll have a national footprint and database of where those situations are coming in from. We're working with some people to tie lawyers into that so that we can have real-time responses as opposed to the challenges you have when you're trying to use the 800-hour vote number, which can get clogged up very quickly. And also, you don't have any documented evidence of the alleged event that impacted an election. So we're going to have all kinds of tactics going into the fall, but this is going to be a full court press on multiple fronts.
Well, it's good to hear that. I mean, we saw that first and foremost in Ohio 2004, where the voting machines were manipulated and there was violence at the polls. And in 2004 in Ohio, it took the average Black voter an hour to 50 minutes to vote, and the average white voter 15. And we assume that there'll be a similar disparity like that coming up in Georgia and in other states around the country. And this is, of course, what's all getting lost in all the other issues that are taking our time up. It's devastating what we're facing here. Ray, thank you for your report again.
Sure.
59 people on with you. It's always great to hear from you. We're still developing our guide and have you in concert with that as well. And thank you.
Always a pleasure, Sluggo.
Okay, my man. We'll see you next week or two, and we'll talk again. Thank you, Ray McClendon, for being with us. As I say, we're at the top of the hour now. We got 59 people with us. We're going to switch to energy, and we have the great Paul Gunter with us. I have to say that this past week has been a multiple landmark in American energy history. You know, there's all this big palaver about a nuclear renaissance. Paul and I have been hearing this. How many renaissances have we had now? This is like the third or fourth renaissance for nuclear power. But the reality is twofold or threefold. First of all, in the state of New York, the first offshore wind farm has opened and connected to the grid. This is the first time in U.S. history that a major offshore wind array is now pumping electricity into the grid. I believe we have Ron Leonard with us also, our great energy pioneer from the state of New York, to talk about this. Simultaneously, we are looking, and I'm not sure exactly when, Paul, you're the guy who probably know, that we're looking at the imminent opening of the very last large, there's Ron Leonard, good to see you, Ron, the very last large light water reactor in the United States, which is Vogtle number 4, came in a mere $20 billion over budget. I don't know how many years late, but when Vogtle opens, if it ever does, there will be zero, for the first time since I believe 1954, when they started building shipping port, Westinghouse and the Navy, outside of Pittsburgh. Since 1954 until 2024, that's 70 years, if I got my math right, there has always been at least one commercial large light water reactor under construction or on order in the United States of America. And as of now, or whenever Vogtle flips the switch, there will be zero. And there will never be another light water reactor built in the United States. And for those of you who saw Oppenheimer, there was a guy in Oppenheimer, played by Robert Downey Jr., who won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. What the hell? Louis Strauss, what's his name? And he was the head of the Atomic Energy Commission. And he's the guy who said that nuclear power was going to be too cheap to meter. Now, I debated his granddaughter in Cleveland, and she denied that he said that. But we have it in black and white, man. And Louis Strauss, aka Robert Downey Jr., did say there would be nuclear power too cheap to meter. And that has been the basis of more than 100 large light water reactor projects in the United States, and they are done. There is never going to be another large light water reactor built in the United States. Paul Gunter, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, what you describe is Strauss's too cheap to meter, in fact, has become too expensive to matter, and we also are seeing the cost without a ceiling. I mean, the French reactors right now, Flamanville is now projected at 56 billion.
Oh God, one reactor or two? Is that one?
Not Flamanville, but yeah, it is Flamanville. Flamanville is projected to finish at 56 billion, and that figure is still smoke and mirrors. But Harvey, I have never seen it as bad as it is now, and I wish I had your confidence that we will never see another monstrosity like Seabrook or the last reactor before Vogel to be finished was Watts Bar, and it took them 16 years to build it. And it was just another one of these monstrosities. But I'll tell you, the Department of Energy is still promoting large reactors. And if you're looking at what went on at the COP28, we've just sold Poland 6 of these AP1000s. So if we can't build them here, they're going to try to build them elsewhere. And cost be damned, climate be damned. Right now, we've got it in writing that the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the environmental reviews for new reactor construction will not be looking at climate change. They're saying that an environmental review of sea level rise, of unprecedented precipitation, is beyond the scope of an environmental review for license renewals. And these are the 60 to 80-year license renewals. And the legislation out there, with the White House backing it, has basically turned the clock back to the Atomic Energy Commission, where you've got Senator Manchin now, who's on the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works, which oversees the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, as well as the nomination of new commissioners, saying that we've got to remove the zealots of these overly zealot commissioners who take safety too serious when we've got we've got to build to address climate change. I mean, he promotes climate change while the very actions of the NRC are going to ignore the environmental review of it. And that's and you got White House, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who's behind this, initial act, the Senate Bill 1111, or the Advanced Nuclear Act. He was one of the co-sponsors. He's criticized the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for, in one of his hearings, he said, he recognized that there may be a backdoor for industry into the commission that gets to not look at sea level rise. And he's a Democrat from Rhode Island. He complained about it in a Senate hearing, but the bill that he just authorized, expressly, leaves tire tracks over the environmental review process. Go ahead.
So, Paul, the way I see it, and we're joined by Mary Olson, and we're going to talk about this great film about 3 Mile Island where people did die. The way I see it at this point, Paul, is that the economic realities of the large reactors will not allow another one to be built in this country, even if it's government supported. But and they're coming up with these small reactors, which are utterly ridiculous. They can't have a prototype in the United States until 2029 or 30. That's 5 or 6 years away. And in the meantime, renewable energy is booming. And the real fight that they're doing everything in their power to stop solar energy. Everything they possibly can.
That's my point, Harvey. They are doing everything they can to keep the grab on the money. They don't care if they wind up with a product. They want to have the money. And so you've got Congress now siphoning off money from the renewable industry, the efficiency and conservation efforts. And it pleases the nuclear industry to spend it on reactors that are nothing but mirages.
But I have become a free market advocate in energy, and I'm going to say at this point in time that wind and solar, along with battery technology, have gotten so cheap that whatever they do with the government, at some point in time, they're going to crack, because the numbers on solar and wind and battery technology are so overwhelmingly cheap and getting cheaper that, well, they stabilized pretty much in solar, but that there's nothing they can do. And I think we're going to win in this gap. But,
look, Harvey, the thing is, I agree with you on the logic, but right there in California, Diablo Canyon, which is going into license renewal, is blocking the largest West Coast offshore wind farm from even gaining access.
I agree.
And it's these kinds of strategies. Again, they don't care if they don't build these things. All they're doing is a money grab, and they've got the lobbying force to do it.
Well, you're 100% right. But having been a born optimist and having helped defeat the first 2 reactor projects I faced, which were in Montague, Massachusetts, I am optimistic. At some point, we're going to crack these guys. And you remember, we didn't win at Seabrook on Unit 1, but we did kill Unit 2. And Richard Nixon said there'd be 1,000 reactors in the United States by the year 2000. And in the year 2000, there were 104. And we're down to 94 now. My big prayer, my big conflict is that we get them all shut before the next one explodes. That's the race we're in, I believe. We're going to go to Mary Olson in a minute. Mary, if you can wait just until we have, we got 58 people with us. We go to Mike Hirsch, Barbara Winsat, Wendy Lederman. We also have Ron Leonard in the wings, but we want to talk to Mary Olson about this amazing film and the realities of 3 Mile Island. Mike Hirsch, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much for this. Is an absolutely fascinating and important discussion. I just wanted to mention, Sluggo, that we have Rose Danny Cadet to do an update on Haiti, which is an absolute emergency situation right now. So I was wondering if we could just put a pin in this for about 10, 15,
Well,
and then get back to it.
and if Rosemary could wait until 5:30 or 40, that would be great. And then we can give her a clean 20 minutes. That would be really good. Because
Okay,
Mary Olson
Oh.
is on loan here. So if we can ask her, that would be terrific. Thank you, Mike, for
Okay,
that.
I'll ask her.
Okay, Barbara Wimsatt and Wendy Lederman. Barbara, are you unmuted?
Yeah. No.
Go ahead. Oh, God.
So
There we go.
muting me.
There you go. Go ahead.
Okay, maybe it's the nuclear industry that's muting me.
Oh, it's my area. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that on the shores of Lake Michigan, there are some old nuclear reactors, and one of them was just shut down, but then it was bought by some company that's trying to revive it.
Holtec.
And, I mean,
Holtec.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and you know, just the fact that Lake Michigan has 20% of the world's fresh water, and that they have these nuclear reactors right on the shore. I mean, it's just horrifying. So, you know, I wish somebody would address it.
Well, we are actually great. Kevin and Paul Gunter is a Michigan boy, and Kevin Camps, another Kalamazoo guy. Those two guys have been really on the Palisades case. You know, Palisades has been shut for 2 years, 2.5, and they're going to try and reopen it. It's like taking a car that you've had on blocks in your front yard for 2 years and try and restore the thing. I am skeptical, to put it mildly, but thank you for that, Barbara. Wendy, and then we're going to go straight to Mary Olson.
Thank you. I'll try to be really quick. Two quick things. One, I just keep hearing about wind, which is just something that's been spinning, pun intended, in my head for all week. I mean, a lot longer than that. But I live in the most highly Cuban populated area outside of Cuba, and something that's really common, which I love, is that there's all these ornamental windmills. I've talked about this before, and they're small scale, and I always wonder, like, how do we wire these up? How do we, like, there's energy, there's kinetic energy everywhere. So I think that small scale decentralizing is really, really like the way to go, the best bang for the buck, because then it can be everywhere and we're not dependent. One other thing, and I have an email to you and Harvey and Carl that's sitting in my drafts right now, some information that I came up with that I found on nuclear that I think that everyone should know about, and maybe we could talk about it more later. But one thing that concerns me is that the data centers for the big tech companies require in almost an immeasurable amount of power that we don't really think about, these massive data centers. And Amazon just signed a deal with a power plant, I think in Pennsylvania, to get their power nuclear for a contract moving forward with a giant data center. And there's a research and military or government facility in Idaho where they're doing more research and trying to implement, and they're getting investors, lots of investors from the tech sector to power their data centers through nuclear. And that's a huge part of this hyped push to the younger generations, which is also tied into the military. So thank you.
Well, the problem they have is that they don't have the reactors. They're tying it into hypothetical small modular reactors that don't exist, and that won't have a prototype in the United States until 29 or 30. And, you know, as Amy Levin says, where they're really going to have to go is the small modular renewables. Paul, you want to comment on that? We'll go to Mary Olson.
Well, Amazon, she's right. Amazon has just got a power purchase contract with the operational Susquehanna nuclear power station in Pennsylvania. So there is a move, you know, they're not going to wait. NewScale, basically the DOE's pilot reactor, small modular reactor project, just got caught in a major scandal with a Bitcoin operator for Ohio and 3 states, Pennsylvania and another one. They were way out over their reach financially for 24 SMRs. And here, the operation is run by people who are on the lam from tax evasion in New York. And so it's a problem
It's a scam
again
operation.
because the scandals right now are exceeding the reality, but nevertheless there's this momentum that keeps pushing this.
Right. Well, I think when the first small modular reactor comes online, if it ever does in the United States, it'll be known as Don Corleone Unit 1. But we'll see about that. Mary Olson, you with us, Mary? And TATANKA has a question, and we're going to go to Mary Olson.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, good. Let's give TATANKA a word, and then we want to talk about 3 Mile Island. Go ahead, TATANKA.
All I want to do is point out that you're right, Harvey, but that the thing that Paul's bringing up on the money grab is it's like the corporate elite, whether it's Trump and his elections, the situation is delay, 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 delay. One case is delay paying money, delay getting justice from the justice system. And in this case, the momentum we need to solve the climate crisis is so urgent that they are just delaying years and generations. And so we can be totally right on the analysis, Harvey, but what we need to do is somehow find a way to break through this delay thing where they have no facts to help their side. None. No, nothing on safety, nothing on, but they control the way things are measured, the way things are reported, and it's killing us. So anyway, I just wanted to say that you're both right, but that the cost of the delay to all of us with the nuclear power plant that I live with that's been reopened, that's like 12 miles from my home, and every night when the house creaks from the cold weather, I'm wondering whether it's an earthquake and we're going to be gone.
Yeah. Well, we saw massive destruction of the wind industry in northern Ohio, which could have produced billions of dollars worth of wind energy in the last 10 years. And now we're see them fighting us solar in California. It's outrageous. Mary Olson, you're with this wonderful film called Women of 3 Mile Island. Tell us about it, please. And then we'll go to
I will tell you about it, although I want to get in one last little piece of this conversation that you've been having. Is that okay, Harvey? Can I make a segue? Okay.
Mary, it's all you.
I live in North Carolina. I've been here 23 years. We call the South the plutonium plantation because we have only state-regulated utilities here. And that changes the whole equation. I love the free market. I love renewable energy. I think you're all right about it, Harvey. But in the part of the world I live in, it's kind of irrelevant unless and until those megacorps decide that they can be profitable enough to drop their stupid addictions to stupid things, right? And I use that word now because I just do think it is stupid, but it doesn't really bring in the conversation we want to have. So I try to bite my tongue and not say that in public here in the South. But in any case, the long and the short of it is that I want to put a flag on the fact that the Northeast is where reactors are being closed. Yay, wonderful. But the owners have sold them to 2 different companies that are decommissioning firms. And each of those is linked up with a reprocessing plutonium interest. Holtec has a very strong alliance with Areva in France, known as Orano here. And I am deeply concerned that we're going to start having the plutonium economy that Gregory Bateson and his marvelous wife, Margaret Mead, wrote about in 1970 and helped to get our nation to not accept plutonium as the future. And that is really the segue to then talking about the film about 3 Mile Island, because plutonium is in every reactor core. Every single uranium reactor produces plutonium in the course of splitting atoms, producing the heat, and the heat is what is used to generate the electric power. And so in that irradiated fuel that's going along with these decommissioning sites is about 1% weapons usable plutonium that also could be used for, this whole idea of the small modular reactors using up the waste, which is really not a very credible idea at all. But the whole movement towards reprocessing. So I went around that circle twice. Now I'm going to go back to the plutonium in the fuel, in the reactor core. And when you have a major reactor accident, like the melting of those fuel rods, 80% meltdown, Harrisburg on the island in 1979, right? I got that, you're right, 1979.
Yes, it's 1979.
So we're coming up on the 45th anniversary. And what happens when a reactor starts not having its containment work? And Arnie Gunderson has shown that the containment at 3 Mile Island did not hold. It did burst, and then things came back to a pressure level where it resumed, because what containment in a reactor is a pressure boundary. And there was so much heat and so much pressure from melting that fuel that, in fact, the plume that went over Harrisburg did have fuel particles in it, did have plutonium in it. People did die, and there was data taken at the 5-year mark under a court order. And we don't have time to unfold that unless people want to hear more. But just to say that my friend and colleague, the late Steve Wing, re-examined that 5-year-old data from the Harrisburg community of cancer rates and found that the people who were living under the plume, because there was a very directed wind pattern during the 3 Mile Island meltdown, and there was a distinct plume. There was radioactivity in the whole area, but this one direction up towards the north and northeast got a lot more. And the people living under that plume were compared by Steve Wing years later to the data from the people in the other areas. And he found a 400% increase in overall cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, and breast cancer at the 5-year mark. At the 5-year mark. This challenges all the concepts about cancer in a non-plutonium moment. But in a plutonium moment, it was Steve Wing's theory that exposure triggered cancers that were latent in that population already, okay? And so there definitely were very many more people who died from 3 Mile Island than has ever been acknowledged. And then we come to Heidi Huttner. She's a professor at Stony Brook on Long Island. And she undertook to go and interview people and found a group of women for whom this had been a transformative. Their life was never the same again, transformative. And started making a film some years ago. She shot the footage of me that's in the film in 2018. So it's been a long process. But now the film, called Radioactive, The Women of 3 Mile Island, is on streaming platforms. It's on Apple Plus, and it is on Amazon Prime, both for a small rental. It's not with your subscription, but if you have those platforms, you can access this film for a small fee and see it. And then we're having an amazing opportunity to bring people together in the wake of this event. These nuclear accidents, these plutonium eruptions, these disruptions of communities and people's lives have a beginning. That was March 28th, 1979. That was the beginning. There isn't an end. There will be plutonium in that environment and downstream of that environment for time to come. There is no end. But you can register for the webinar, although I will say I think there's a problem with the registration link, so you may have to wait a day or two and then go to radioactive, spell out radioactive, thefilm.com. radioactivethefilm.com, and you can see that on the screen right now up at the top. So
Well,
there's a good introduction. My dog is snoring. If you hear a strange noise, that's Ginger.
Well, I have to say that this is one of the most important untold stories in world history. The idea that no one died at 3 Mile Island is the biggest lie ever told in American history, American industrial history. I went to 3 Mile Island in January of 1980. I spent the worst 10 days of my life interviewing people in the farmhouses. And there were two women, Jane Lee and Mary Osborne, who conducted house-to-house surveys in Lower Sortoric Township and showed clear cancer almost immediately. And this is, extremely important. The film is beautiful, and everybody should see it. We'll talk about it again next week. The accident began at 4 a.m., March 28th, 1979. I will say that I stood across from the 3 Mile Island plant in Middletown and in 1980, and I held a dog that had been born with no eyes. Now, if that's not enough to get your attention, I don't know what is. Ron Leonard, go ahead, please.
So, Harvey, you forgot to get the ammunition that the government always uses when they talk about projects. It's something like $1 billion here, $1 billion there, pretty soon into real money. And that's the problem that we have. We're really into real money, and we have to choose where we're going to invest that money. We're the investors. The government's sort of just handing our money out to strange things, and the payback is part of that calculation. And if you get a solar system or a wind system, you can calculate the payback of that system, and it's rather rapid. Whereas a nuclear power system, I can think of one up on the Hudson River, and it was taken apart, and there's these pools of radioactive stored materials there. So that system is a payout system. It continually takes our money and throws it away, and there is really no payback for these large or small plants. It's just an extended use of capital for a bad thing. So we can make a smart decision. We can figure this out. And we have the tools right now to do what we need to do, which is 100% renewable energy.
Right. And I
I want
say,
to tag on to that if I could.
well, very quickly, let me say one thing about 3 Mile Island. And Mary Olson is a big part of this. The industry loves to debate the health impacts of 3 Mile Island, and they did a wonderful job. The one thing they did well was refuse to study the health impacts. And so all the real studies have come from the citizens, not from the company, not from the government. But 3 Mile Island, as of March 27th, 1979, was a $900 million asset. And as of March 29th, 1979, it was a $2 billion liability. So there are all smart numbers about that. Now, I interrupted someone who wanted to say, who was
That was me. That was me. And I just wanted to add that Finland has not reported this much at all, but they have published the fact that radioactive waste disposal, it is not an externality there, per ton will cost more for the irradiated fuel rods than all of the profit ever obtained from the use of that fuel by that society. So I had a friend years ago who said nuclear energy is a black hole. So if it costs more to do it than what you get out, even in the best case scenario of the profit, not even considering, all the other parts, then it is a black hole.
And Mary, you mentioned Arnie Gunderson, one of the smartest people I've talked to, and he described how tritium is leaking out of those pools into the Hudson River. And literally the solution that they're coming up with is dilution is the solution to pollution. But that's nuts.
Beyond that, of course, we have a situation. I believe John LaForge is on the call, where they're dumping gargantuan quantities of radioactive material into the Pacific Ocean, an uncontrolled experiment, in nuclear death. They could kill the whole Pacific Ocean with that radiation, and we wouldn't know. Lynn, Mary?
One of the things that's not understood, except for that it's intuitively obvious, is that it takes one cell to make a baby, and it takes one cell to make a cancer. And so the amount of radiation to start a cancer or to stop a baby can't be predicted. There's not a risk analysis for that, because any amount can produce an exposure, and any exposure can produce the death of the baby or the birth of the cancer, right? So this is got a fancy word. The radiation community calls this stochastic, because they can't really fathom how to talk about this. But the way women and mothers and fathers and smart radiation scientists talk about it is to say there is no safe level of radiation exposure, because even the smallest exposure that can't be measured sometimes, not every time, but sometimes is in the position to either start that cancer or end that pregnancy.
Right. And I want to point out that during 3 Mile Island, the company came out as a means of reassuring the public, compared the radiation dose to the general population from 3 Mile Island as a single chest X-ray for everybody. Now, in the 1950s, Dr. Alice Stewart proved, and she was totally crucified for this, but she proved that a single X-ray to a pregnant woman will cause a doubled chance of childhood leukemia for the fetus. And so what the company was saying was, okay, all you pregnant women in the area, you now have a doubled chance of childhood leukemia for your offspring. Of course, we pointed that out, but nobody else did. LYNNE FEINERMAN has not spoken. Lynn, go ahead. Are you unmuted, Lynn?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
unmuted now. Yeah, I just wanted to add to Mary's really, really fine presentation that the United States and other supposedly highly developed but quite nuclearized nations on the planet have the highest cancer rates in the world. If you look at a map, I mean, it's startling. And so what I just wanted to add to what Mary was saying, that we don't even know, because no one wants to do the research, what Hanford is doing to the West Coast water, as Mary Butler Stonewall said in the chat. We don't know what it really, even after the great movie that they made, we don't know really what the stats are and who got cancer and who didn't. It's all being suppressed. And of course, there's a massive poisoning of the land and the people in New Mexico and Arizona and the entire area where the Grand Canyon is. That Pinyon Plain uranium mine is going to poison all of that in the air and in the water. So it's a huge issue. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, John LaForge, if you want to jump in, please do. Very quickly, Mary and Steve, and then we'll go back to Paul Gunter and John. We'll go to John LaForge and Paul Gunter. Go ahead. Mike,
I want to throw in the fact that we have the data to show that radiation causes cancer. We have the data to show that radiation causes heart disease and stroke. We have the data to show that there's a whole array of other outcomes besides those that are non-cancer. We know that radiation causes problems with pregnancy and reproduction, and we could attribute a large percentage of infertility in the industrialized nations, which is also a rampant impact right now, in addition to cancer, heart disease, and stroke. So all of this, the problem is that we don't have any willingness on the part of even the radiation researchers to call it out, because all the money comes from the sources that have the liability. And in the United States, we have not health care, but death care. We have not, nationalized medicine where the provider of the medications and the treatments would care about the outcomes. Instead, we have profit from disease. So, we've got this upside down and backwards thing. Do I honestly think it can be fixed? Yes, I do. Why do I? Because we didn't split an atom until 1942. We didn't weaponize it until 1945. This means that we made these decisions, that this comes out of the minds of human beings, and human beings can change our minds. We can. We just simply have to have the conviction that that is the path forward. And everyone on here knows it's the path forward. So we don't have to convince each other anymore. We need to move on to problem solving. And I invite us to do that.
My question, I wanted to ask if Rosa D is still with us, and if she's got time to talk about Haiti in a few minutes.
She's gone. I don't know if she's
hold
coming
on.
back or not.
She's in Haiti. She had to leave to preserve her power, but she'll be back when you told her to come back, Sluggo. So we'll watch for her.
Okay, please do. Please do. This is, of course, a fascinating and saving discussion. We haven't heard from John LaForge, who's one of the great activists here on this issue. You're in Wisconsin, right, John?
Thanks, Harvey. I'm still in Hamburg. I'm getting back to Wisconsin in 2 weeks.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks for the invitation. We are working on a problem right here in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Mary, trying to stop the relicensing of the third oldest reactor in the United States, good old Monticello, which is on the Mississippi River. They had a terribly large tritium leak in November of 2022. They made it public in March of 23. While they were during the hush-hush period, they applied for a 20-year license extension so they can run it until it's 80 years old. So we're waiting for the draft environmental impact statement to drop so that public comment period will start and we can ask people to condemn this proposal to run this jalopy for an additional 20 years. The problem with tritium, of course, in addition to everything Mary already mentioned, and maybe you did say this already, was that it does cross the placenta. So it makes a direct threat to the offspring. And the problem with Monticello, with their 829,000 gallon of tritiated water, their leak, the groundwater there goes directly to the Mississippi, which provides drinking water for Minneapolis, St. Paul, and 7 suburbs, and all 36 million people downriver from the Twin Cities. So this is a direct threat to a large number of people in the United States. And, this was an underground pipe, just like what happened at Vermont Yankee, where there's a mile of underground pipes under any particular operating reactor, and they're all 50 years old. In Minnesota, the 2 on Prairie Island are also 50 years old. And underground leaking pipes are a chronic problem in the United States, and another reason to shut down these machines.
And the 2 reactors at Prairie Island are literally in the middle of the Mississippi River.
In the floodplain, yes.
Yeah, they're outside of Minneapolis, and they're totally, plopped down. So an accident, God forbid, at either reactor at Prairie Island, the entire Mississippi River is as good as or as bad as dead. Very quickly, Mary Butler, then Steve, and then we'll go back to Paul Gunter. This is an incredibly important discussion. I guarantee you nobody else on the radio in the United States is having this discussion. Go ahead, Mary, then Steve, and then Paul Gunter.
All right, quickly, Mary, I would love to work with you on what you're trying to do. I'm not a finger pointer. I'm a solution finder. I shared all my information with you. Please, please. But what I wanted to bring up is Just like we've just mentioned different water supplies that are being poisoned with nuclear waste. Now we got to go to the Columbia and Hanford, and the fact that Hanford was burnt twice, and that it's so the Hanford nuclear power plant, let alone the waste that's there in the storage units, are so under ill repair that people have quit working there and moved out of country and out of state because they know that it's any time that it could actually blow up because there's so many cracks because of the fires, the forest fires we had. And then with you guys with the droughts in California, you guys have been getting the water supply that is contaminated from Hanford when you guys are drinking anything out of the Columbia. So be worried.
You're 100% right. Steve,
Can I give my
Caruso?
website so people can reach out?
Yes, absolutely. And that's what the chat is for. Please put it in the chat as well.
Okay, it is www.radiation. Oops, I'm making a mistake. www.genderandradiation.org. Thank you. I'll put it in too.
Please put it in the chat. Steve Caruso, and then we'll go back to Paul Gunter.
Yes, I wonder if somebody could distinguish between the plutonium and the uranium involved in nuclear power. We always hear about the uranium, and then the plutonium is what?
Well, plutonium is 239. The uranium they use is 235. Natural uranium, I believe, is 232. So I may be wrong about that, but plutonium 239 was actually co-discovered by John Goffman, who then should have gotten the Nobel Prize and became one of the great opponents of nuclear power. And the plutonium, which is the higher grade, oh, there she is, she's back, is called fiendishly toxic, fiendishly toxic. We're going to continue this another time because Rosemary is back. I do want to give Paul Gunter and Mary Olson a chance for a last word. We will not obviously abandon this. We'll continue to discuss these nuclear issues. This was a very good discussion. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Paul. Go ahead, Paul. You're at beyondnuclear.org, and Mary, you'll give your website as well, and then we'll go to Haiti.
I'll just say quickly, I was asked to comment on the two pieces of legislation that just went through Congress. And the one feature common to both that we need to understand is that this whole push for new reactors, the whole push for taking the eye off of federal oversight, particularly focused on safety, and to put it back into promotion, again, to take us back to the AEC. The one thing that's consistent is that both pieces of legislation extend and expand the Price-Anderson Act, which went through both the House and the Senate without a single public hearing. And in both cases, the Senate passed a 20-year extension. The House passed a 40-year extension. It's got to go now to reconciliation, but both pieces of legislation expand the limiting the legal liability of the nuclear industry from the next accident. It's expanded to include new reactors, these inherently safe, walk-away safe, needs no emergency plan safe. They want Price-Anderson. That's the biggest lie, the biggest ruse, and the biggest fraud that's being perpetrated on us and the future.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. That's brilliant. Price-Anderson says that these reactors don't have to have catastrophic insurance. Anybody that tells you they support nuclear power, ask them how much money they're willing to put up to insure against a major catastrophe. Mary, also, when it comes to radiation, you're going to have the last word today. Thank you, Paul, one of my great heroes in the No Nukes movement. Mary, you too. Can you give us the last word before we go to
Absolutely, Harvey. It makes sense that when the Cold War and the Manhattan Project had so many hundreds of thousands of military and paramilitary males, that they would choose to build standards to protect those people and therefore have a reference man. but they never stopped for an instant. They never took a breath before they started applying reference man to everybody in the world, everybody from infants to elders. And it turns out that the young adult male is some of the most resistant biological tissue out there in our life cycle, in our life stages, and that female bodies are categorically more harmed by radiation, and children, whether male or female, are more harmed by radiation, which means that the most harmed are, of course, the unborn and also young girls. So the fetus, the embryo, the fetus, and young girls are where our regulations should be centered, could be centered, and Cindy Folkers and I are working on creating that center. Yay!
Well, good for you, Mary Olson. You're a great hero. And if you'll put your links in the chat, Paul Gunter, such an honor to have you with us as always. We will continue to return to this week after week after week. This is the future of the human race. Thank you so much. No nukes, and we'll get to Solartopia as soon as we possibly can. We do need to talk next week with Ron Leonard about what's being done to the... Okay, Rose Danny Cadet, can we join you in Haiti? Are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, you are on. We are honored and intrigued to have a report again from Haiti. We know that there's a lot going on there. If you give us 5 minutes and tell us what's happening, we really appreciate it. Wow, look at that.
Well, what is happening is that as of the 4th of March, the gangs have started taking control of the capital city. They've attacked the airports, so the airports are closed, both international and domestic. They've attacked police stations, the National Palace. Many police stations are abandoned. The gangs now have drones. There's been some video showing that some of the gang members are now have procured SWAT uniforms. They're also making weapons. They're controlling the entire downtown area around the airport. So not even buses are traveling across the country. That's Port-au-Prince. I am currently in Port-au-Prince, but as you can see, I'm not in the middle of any shootings. So the violence has been mostly centered in the downtown area, although last night in the area of Pétionville, there were incursions because I think with the new situation in terms of leadership, it's looking like constitutionally, the next ruler of the country should be the head judge of our Supreme Court and not an international observatory transitionary government. And that part of the discussions in terms of having that kind of transitionary body that would help bring about elections has been rejected by all of the political parties. So that's what's going on, and all of the embassies have helivaced all of their staff. The U.S. government is evacuating U.S. citizens through Cape Haitian, which is the northern airport. Those of us who are in Port-au-Prince have no way of getting to Cape Haitian because there are no routes, no safe routes out of Port-au-Prince at this current time. That's what I have to say.
Well, that's a shocker. Is there shooting going on? Are there people being harmed? And who are these gangs?
Well, there according to what I've been reading, there are over 300 gangs. So there are lots of different gangs. Several of the gangs are headed by former police officers. Other criminals, there are nightly shootings. As I said last night, there was incursion up in the Pétionville area, and this morning 7 bodies were found dead just laying in the street. Yeah, people are being shot, people are fleeing their homes, they have nowhere to go because the gangs have taken over their neighborhoods. And so they fled. People are living on the street. People who can get out are trying to get out to the provinces if they can. Food is getting scarce because there's plenty of food in the countryside, but because the roads are blocked, produce from the countryside is not able to get into the city.
Oh my God. I'm Wendy Lederman. Did you want to say something, Wendy? You have a
Thank
hand?
you. Thanks for being with us, Rose Denny. Ça passe. Welcome.
Muy bien.
I was bien. Merci or bienvenuto. I think I'm mixing in my language. I'm gonna stop quit while I'm ahead, but welcome to have you. It's
Thank you.
yeah, of course. Thank you. It's I'm in Miami. I'm like 20 minutes away from Little Haiti. So I mean
Okay.
yeah, I'm with your people. Like it's we're all, you know, we're here. At least I'm here. So I've been, you know, following what's going on with Haiti for a long time. What I'm seeing now, I think I heard that apparently like the US is trying to appoint like a prime minister or something. And I watched a really good brief. I don't remember who the lady was that was on Democracy Now! Just this week, but she was she's a Democratic activist from within Haiti and speaking about the government's role and the gangs and saying like where are these weapons coming from. And so like because it's just it seems like it's from our point of view here in the United States, it's just a very nebulous situation. And of course, media doesn't report as clearly on, you know, Black and brown countries, we'll be honest, you know. So what we hear is just is not obviously a complete picture. So I'm just wondering like what the movement is like for the people in Haiti. What do the Haitian people want? Is there some sort of galvanizing happening so that sorry, I that just got me a little distracted there, Steve. But yeah, just wondering what's going on with the people and if you think that
What the Haitian people want is to be able to just have their everyday life, you know. So everyone who's speaking for the Haitian people right now, in my opinion, no one's listening to the Haitian people. The gangs say that they're working for the people, but yet they're going into people's homes, they're raping women, children, they're providing guns to 10 and 12-year-olds. I don't see that as working for the people. Schools have been closed for weeks now, so once again, our children are losing a good portion of their academic year. The politicians, you know, the gangs proliferated because of the politicians. And I think what's happening now is that the gangs have outgrown the reaches of the politicians. And there are politicians that are still protecting some of the gang members. Guns are being brought into the country through lots of different means. There's the missionaries are bringing in guns, politicians are bringing in guns, the elite are bringing in guns. And so the average, if you were to talk to an average Haitian person today, there's a young man who works here. He just wants to be able to walk outside and not fear that he's going to catch a stray bullet on his way to run an errand. The woman who cooks for the family that I'm staying with came to work today, and on her way to work came across the 7 bodies that I mentioned. That's what the regular Haitians don't want to keep happening. Children are seeing this. So in my opinion, the average Haitian just wants peace. The average Haitian wants to be able to go to work and be able to feed their families. And all of the pundits, the politicians, the US government, no one is speaking or acting for the Haitian people. because all of the international embassies have evacuated their staff. The American government is evacuating American citizens. The security issue here, no one's addressing that security issue. Everyone is just like, oh, okay, let's leave the ship because it's sinking. But the problems that are here, the US government is implicit in that problem. US citizens are unknowingly, because of voting for policies that have led to what is going on in my country. So I think part of what the US media is not covering is how implicit is the US government is in what's going on. And why is there this major impetus to want to send international forces to come and help us deal with internal problems without really asking the Haitian people what they want?
Is there a government left in Haiti?
Well, our prime minister is currently in Puerto Rico. I believe 5 or 6 of the ministers are also out of the country. There's a skeleton so-called government, but no one is really making any decisions to do anything. You know, everybody wants power, but no one has said, this is the plan of how we are going to deal with the situation. The gangs have not relinquished their holds on the grip on the city. No one wants to speak to the gang members, and I think that's unwise because they currently are in charge of the city. And not having a conversation with them, to me, seems that no one's really interested in bringing this situation to a close anytime soon.
Is there a functioning police force?
So our police force has been beaten by the gangs. There is a police force, but it's no match for the gangs. They were able to last week when the gangs they attacked the main police headquarters in excuse me, in Port-au-Prince, not too far from the National Palace. The SWAT team was able to help. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I think I literally just swallowed a mosquito. So hold on a second, please.
Oh my God. From South Africa to Haiti.
And a lot of police stations have been attacked. The gangs have been very organized in their attacks, where they do run simultaneous operations to spread the already thin police force even thinner. So there is an acting police, but it's very limited.
Jesus. Myra Reason, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us. You know, in I believe 2021, French economist Thomas Piketty estimated that France, the nation of France, owes Haiti a minimum of $27 billion, or is it million? It has to be billion. And please, I'm sorry, that is distracting, but what I'm wondering is, you said, of course, one of the things that's going on now is that people aren't asking what the Haitian people want in terms of next steps in order to bring these gangs under control. But do you have a prescription of what you think would be the best way forward now, aside from France paying Haiti back all of the money that is owed?
You know, as far as France paying us any money back, I'm certainly not holding my breath for that. And prescription for what the next step is, I have no idea. But I believe that part of that next step should be a conversation by our political leaders and those said gang members. So Nigeria, when Nigeria was going through a horrible civil war, that is how the Nigerian people were able to come to some resolution, was to offer amnesty to the rebels, the terrorists, the government, because at that point, similar to the gangs here, there were many factions fighting for control of the country. Nigeria, fortunately, had neighbors who offered refuge to fleeing Nigerians and neighbors who also offered a neutral ground for these conversations to take place amongst the different fighting um, as people fighting groups. Our nearest neighbor, the Dominican Republic, has closed their border. They won't even allow Haitians who are able to cross the border. So we don't have that. And none of our neighbors, there was a CARICOM meeting that happened, and Haitians were only invited to the meeting via Zoom. But yet, when people needed to get their embassy employees out, they were able to bring helicopters in to helicopter their staff out. So why is that not being offered to us here in IET? Here's a neutral ground. Let's have all of the parties, come without their weapons, sit and start to have just a conversation. Let's start with that and see what we can do to bring the situation closer to resolution. But until that conversation happens, I don't see it getting any better, except for mass military action, which means that many more civilians will be killed, many more civilians will be displaced. And children, as I mentioned before, a lot of these gangs have forced young men to join their gangs because there's no work here. So we have all of these agencies, we have all of these NGOs, we have USAID, we have the European Union, everyone's here, but very few people are creating jobs and infrastructure for Haitian youth, which is one of the reasons why these gangs have been able to proliferate, because they offer the young people direction. It may not be the most positive direction, but they offer them direction, they offer them food, they offer them easy access to money because they give them guns, and having the guns gives them power. So yeah, so to answer your question, no, I have no prescription other than let's start with a conversation and see where that takes us.
Unbelievable. We have 50 people with us. This is a devastating, mind-boggling report. Lynn FEINERMAN, please, Lynn. Anybody else? We're almost out of time. We are deeply grateful to you, Rosa Denny, for joining us. No one has heard a report like this that I know of, and there's certainly not in the news in the American media. You are very, very brave to be with us, and we really appreciate, also very articulate, and we really appreciate your time. Lynn FEINERMAN, if anybody else wants to speak, raise your hand now, because we're going to be done in 13 minutes. Go ahead, Rosa, Lynn.
Yes, thank you, Roseni, for being with us. I'm wondering what the influence of Aristide and Mildred Aristide might be. I don't know how marginalized they have become. I don't know what the country thinks of them, and I would just like your assessment of that.
I have no idea of that at all. The current situation is really the only news that I'm abreast of is what's happening here on a daily basis in terms of what areas are new incursions happening in, and whether or not we who are living where we are going to need to evacuate. So, and in terms of the names that were submitted to the CARICOM for the members of the transitional committee, I know that one member's name was from the Lavalas party, which is former President Aristide's party, but I have no idea who the individual was, and I haven't heard any other mention of Mr. Aristide.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, we'll keep checking in with you. If there's anything at all that people can do, please put contacts in the chat. And you know, I have not heard in all my years a report of total anarchy like this one. And I mean, is there any authority in this? Are any of the gangs worth at all concerned about the public welfare?
You'd have to speak with them about that, because I don't have their ears and I haven't had a conversation with them. As I said, there are over 300 gangs according to reports. So I would imagine that there are some of them who must be protecting their neighborhoods from the other gangs, but I couldn't answer to that.
So basically, we have a country now that's completely being run by gangs without a functioning government. And the economic system must be in total chaos. Yeah.
Well, we don't have a country that is completely being run by gangs. We have a section of the capital of the city that is being run by gangs. There are 10 departments in this country, and the other 9 departments are functioning to the best of their abilities. Their local governments are functioning. Children are going to school. Food is being grown. So, and that's the part of the news that really is something that people need to stop thinking, that the entire country is being run by gangs. A section of the city of Port-au-Prince is being run by gangs. And yes, that does impact the rest of the country, but it's impacting it in different ways. So when you mentioned the economy, yes, the economy, there are many people here who earn their living on a daily basis, and they're not able to do that. There are people who own businesses, and they're not able to open their businesses, so they're losing money. I have a friend who's a pediatrician, and she goes to her office every day, puts gas in her car, and if she has 3 patients in a day, she's lucky. She's lost a lot of her patients because the Biden administration has opened visas and enticed all Haitian professionals who can leave to leave. The Canadian government has done that as well. So those who could actually work here, since there's no work, they've left. Businesses are not able to function. So yes, that is affecting the country economically. But in terms of physical safety, the rest of the country is not in physical danger of these gangs. Yes, occasionally you'll hear of some gang activity, isolated gang activity in a rural province, but that's not the norm. The norm is what's going on in Port-au-Prince in terms of the gang activity.
Well, thank you very much for that report. I don't know what to say. We'll keep coming back to us and giving us updates, if you will. And Mike Hirsch, go ahead. We'll give you the last word on this. Mike?
Yes, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. The United States of America has a lasting debt to the people of Haiti, and we need to pay up for the damages that we've done, that we've caused for many, many decades, that continue to this day. And we are so thankful for you to let us know what's going on, because it's up to us to help. And I do mean help, not set up luxury hotels and whatever else that have happened in the past, and not bring diseases to your nation. We need to provide damages and reparations. And I think we have to get on with that right away.
Well, it is an election year, folks. So make those votes count this year.
Thank you, Rosedani. I do want to get in one last report really quickly from Wendy Lederman. We've been talking over the months and months about Cop City, and it turns out that the Cop City in Georgia that they want to build is not the only Cop City on the drawing boards in this country. Wendy, we have 6 minutes till 4:20. Can you give us a quick update on what you've been hearing about Cop cities?
Sure, I'll do the quick rundown after processing all this incredible information. I want to say thank you again to Rosedani. And if anybody doesn't know like the true history of Haitian people, like read up on it because we're the most resilient people on the planet. One of them anyway. They're amazing. So I'm not worried about the Haitian people. I know that they're gonna pull through as they always do. I mean, but I care about their struggle right now. So Cop City, there's 69 Cop cities planned. There's 3 states that don't have a plan. I'm gonna go ahead and actually screen share right quick so I can show you a map, and I'll describe for the radio listeners what we're seeing here. If you guys can see it, is a map of the United States, and again, all the states except for I think it's South Dakota, Wyoming, and Vermont. I'm sorry, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Vermont are the only states that don't have either planned or under construction facilities underway. I'll post in the chat. There's some lawyer groups that did some digging, like, because a lot of this information isn't publicly posted, but there have been they went through city records and budgets and found out that the cost of these things is anywhere from $1 million to $415 million for single facilities. Some of them can go up to like I want to say 800,000 square feet. These plans started in I'll show you. There's another thing I have here. These are all okay, I'm having difficulty screen sharing, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop, but I will share the links to these graphs and spreadsheets and maps. So this started after the Black Lives Matter protests to suppress urban warfare. Like, again, what's happening in Georgia that's being modeled, and there's some that are already open that we just don't know about, where police are trained by the Israeli military for force on how to suppress urban uprisings. There's mock cities. They'll use explosives. They'll have dorm style like living quarters. I mean, these are huge facilities that usually knock out like vital green space, like what's happening in Atlanta. It's like the area that they're trying to build on has historic slave, Indian, or I should say native, Jim Crow. It's a very particular plot of land that's also known as the lungs of Atlanta, that will directly, of course, impact the low income and Black minority communities. But this also is going to increase police presence, suppression of protesters, activists. This is why it's important to free Assange, because anyone who's speaking out, there's people that were collecting signatures and bail money for people that were arrested just for being at concerts and protests are charged with felony RICO charges, even collecting bail money. The 116,000 signatures that were collected for a referendum to vote on this is being denied by Mayor Andre Dickens, who won't put it on the ballot or verify these signatures, so the people have no say. And these are all funded by corporations. This is mainly funded by the police foundation, the Atlanta Police Foundation, which is all corporate donors. It sounds like a public name, but it's getting most of their money from like Coca-Cola, Home Depot, Norfolk Southern. And so this is going around all over the country where they want to build these training facilities. Again, military, paramilitary style warfare. The Israeli military is legit, is the ones training how to suppress protesters, activists. It's really scary. And then you think about like all the prisons that are going to be built to house all the people that are being, like, they're obviously going to be investing in this for a reason. They're going to need to fill up prisons and arrest people. How's that going to translate into immigration and detention centers and the private prisons? And, it's just cha-ching science for a lot of people that are interested in suppressing humanity, period. And criminalizing the poor. Right now, like Florida just is passing a law to like we're basically going to round up homeless people and put them in camps, like it's illegal to sleep anywhere on public property, and just the slippery slope that could happen. So I'll keep reporting on this, but again, 69 cop cities, massive land use, massive cost, and just terrifying implications to anyone that dares to speak out. And so we really need to come together with whatever causes that we have, because everyone who goes against the government is going to be criminalized or does anything if we blink wrong. We're going there regardless of who's in power. But if Trump gets in, like, just don't even get your passport ready. I don't know. It's scary.
Okay. Well, with that cheery note, Wendy, if you'll put some links in the chat to that. We're at 4:19. I don't see any other hands.
Did you want to get Sheila on? Sheila Goldner?
Oh, yes. This is Sheila Goldner here, who's been by my side. She's came into the house to join me today. And for those of you who are wondering who is at the beach with me. Sheila, did you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Steve Caruso, Mike Hirsch, Wendy, everybody. It's been a mind-boggling. We don't get a breath on these calls. This is really, I don't ever remember, what did we start with? Oh, the candidate from Illinois, seems like a lifetime ago. We will be back again next week. Keep the faith, everybody. No nukes, and God help us all. And just remember, if Trump gets back in the White House, we will be conducting these from Dachau. I do want to very strongly urge everybody who has Netflix to watch this 9-part series called Turning Point, The Bomb and the Cold War. If you can get to Netflix, Turning Point, The Bomb and the Cold War, the last two are on Putin. And anybody that thinks that Putin is anything other than Hitler in Russia, you got to watch these. He is one terrifying dude. It's a brilliant, very powerful series. As a historian, I can vouch for it. And let's go ahead and we'll say no nukes to everybody, and we'll see you next week. Okay?
You just got reelected.
Yeah.
Hold on. Can I ask a real quick question, Sluggo?
Very quick, Danette.
Yeah, just real quick. There is a organization called Code Pink. I'm sure everyone has heard of them. They actually have compiled or actually included in their latest newsletter it's called Operation Olive Branch. You can actually help families in Gaza. I can put that in the chat if anyone would like to check it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danette, and good to see you with us. Thank you for being with us. Everybody, Wendy, did you want to say goodbye?
Yeah, I just thought of something. Thank you. I spoke with I was chatting with Stella Assange's assistant, and they're doing these weekly concert series that they're starting. So she asked that I put out a call to professional musicians, and I'm sorry, just remembered this. So I'm gonna actually try to get her on. I don't know if Stella can make it, but her team possibly can. But they're doing Sunday music series where they're trying to actually promote the careers of up and coming professional musicians and give them kind of a platform, but then also raise awareness for Julian and create like a sense of community. So my email is wendiled@gmail.com, WENDILED@gmail.com. I can put it in the chat. If any musicians want to send me some info, I can put you direct. And she's going to be sending me like a submission link where everyone can just go at some point and do it. It'll be ongoing, I'm sure, until he's free. But yeah, the musicians make songs for.
All right, very good.
And on that note, I'm gonna try to find. Okay, thanks. I was gonna say too with Danette, I don't know the name of it right now, but if anybody looks up eSIMs for Gaza, that's how the journalists and everybody is getting information out of Palestine, because they have these eSIM cards that people donate, and then they're able to get internet signal through solar panels that they connect to their devices. So anyone can look up that way and help the journalists in Gaza. Thank you.
All right, everybody, no nukes. Let's solarize Los Angeles. We'll see you all next week in Solartopia. Thanks again, Steve Caruso, Mike Hirsch, Wendy, everybody, for getting us through this. And I'm exhausted, as always. Take care. No nukes.
No nukes.
Efficient renewable energy.